Well, he's just known by the name of his job. I mean, he does have a name, John O'Shea, a name that was given to him by the doctor who saved his life. Um, but he's called the night watch at the asylum because that's his job. And I think that's just thinking about identity itself and how war steals one's identity. The person who goes to war does not return the same person. And he, in particular, the reader knows who he is. The reader knows at least what he knows of where he came from, and then they begin to know other things about him that he himself never knew. Um, but the idea of namelessness and hiding one's name or changing one's name in an atmosphere like that, in the chaos of the Civil War, which was just a cataclysm. Um, I mean, I think that what we're living through now is shadowed so much by the way that um, the cultural dissonances of that time were never resolved. Um, that was the real pull toward the book, and it was a question of finding witnesses. I mean, characters are witnesses. I don't consider myself a historical novelist at all. I think um, a book that's written about the 80s is a historical novel. Anything we write, if we establish the place and the time, could be called a historical novel. But because my novels are about character and language, um, the historical part of it is the atmosphere in which all of that is happening. But my first intent is not to write about the 30s or about the Civil War. It's trying to find an urgent, believable, authoritative reality inside this time that none of us ever really experienced. But I feel like there's a real time travel aspect to great fiction and great literature and great poetry, that there's this sense of really entering a realm that we could not enter except through empathy, the empathy that's created by literature. Well, the research really supported, all of that. I read, I probably have 4 shelves of books from uh, from Night Watch, books of photographs of the war, diaries. There was all the research about the asylum itself, the research about moral treatment, which was the imported method of treatment by a real physician, um, Kirkbride. All of those huge asylums built in that era were called Kirkbride buildings because he wrote a book in 1854 called On the Construction, General Arrangements, and Building of Lunatic Asylums. And almost all of those asylums used his pattern for building an asylum. The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum enclosed 9 miles of interior space. It ran along the ground for a fourth of a mile. There were 300 acres of land. And that wasn't unusual in these buildings, but this was one of the largest. It was the largest for, I don't know if this is still true, but for into this century, it was the largest hand-hewn sandstone building in the world other than the Kremlin. Um, so there was all of that sort of discovered through research. And of course, I could go there because every time I went back to visit my hometown or my family, I would take the tour at what is now called Tala. It's now a nonprofit. The asylum was just devolving into junk, and a successful asbestos removal businessman bought the asylum from the state of West Virginia for $3 million. And he created a nonprofit out of it. And if you go to tala.org, they have a website and they have they have sort of renovated the entry building, the central building, and furnished it the way it might be furnished in about 1860, 1880. So a lot of, what I write about the asylum is just based on being there. The photograph of the bedroom in the asylum that is on my website in color, I took that picture. I mean, I took photographs at the asylum, and when I took that picture, I just had a sense of this is the room where Connolly and Eliza first live, in the asylum. That's it. That's a version of it. Yeah. And it's very minutely described in the book. That was all real. That is, it was composed, I suppose, by the people who renovated, who kind of turned the asylum into a theater set almost. And some of the pictures that I discovered in various archives, like the picture of the four soldiers, it's a very unusual looking picture at that time to take a picture outdoors of these four soldiers kind of standing behind a tree that they probably have just cut down. I felt as though my character was the tall one, who's not exactly wearing a uniform. He became the man of many names. I mean, we kind of don't get the name that he takes for himself, that he created for himself, until very near the end of the book.